that, you create a situation which is a brand new clear and present danger, a virus being released into a major metropolitan city and spreading and changing the landscape, transforming it completely. And the clear and present danger isn't necessarily the virus. It's the chaos that ensues. And that's what you, as a division agent, have to deal with. That's something that we have built on the first game, where the virus was released and spread across New York, but it wasn't contained by the government, and then spread across the nation. And we find ourselves in Washington, D.C. in the Division 2, 7 months after the fall of New York and the fall of the country. And as division agents, we're going to have to help the rebirth of America.
Well, clearly Washington, D.C., right? A real place. And so there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with trying to recreate something that exists in reality. Ubisoft has historically, as a publisher, really done a fantastic job of digging deep into the historical significance of some of these places, and that's no exception for the Division. What kinds of research did you guys do when you were trying to take this real-world city and then transform it into the Division?
So this is something that's public, but it's a little-known fact that Ubisoft invests a huge amount in their teams getting to know the cities that they work in. So Watch Dogs 2 will have spent a huge amount of time in San Francisco. And the Division, of course, we spent months and months of research time, not only in New York, but also in Washington, D.C. And the result of that is a huge amount of photos, videos, interviews, and, we even produce a internal-only book that looks like this. It looks like a professionally produced book, because it is a professionally produced book, that's full of interviews, things that we did together. We went on hunting trips where we caught deer and transformed it into meat to give to homeless shelters, to be aware of the entire chain of distribution of food for the civilian settlements that we're going to have in the Division 2. And this contains information about the evolution of the city of Washington, D.C., the population, things like that. So our Washington, D.C., although it's being transformed completely, is still something that's recognizable. And we've built it one-to-one with the real city. So if you know Washington, D.C., you'll really find everything that you're familiar with within that city. And of course, we've transformed all of those buildings, transformed them with an eye to, okay, how would this building be used in a pandemic-style situation?
I was always so fascinated walking through New York, just how no corner was left neglected. Like every single piece of the world felt like someone took the time and the care to build out those spaces. I mean, there's several layers of this creation going on. You guys have so many different people on your team. I mean, how do you begin to coordinate all of those different pieces to create a unified vision of what the world of Washington, D.C. and the Division 2 is going to look like?
So, both with the Division and the Division 2, we went in and we looked at the cities in terms of grids, in terms of different name zones, and each team has responsibilities to spin stories, to spin narrative using environment, using concept art, using graphic art, different things that bring the world alive. And if we look at one of the most famous buildings in the world that was based in New York City, Madison Square Garden, everybody's familiar with this building, right? Yeah? It's a sports hall. It's a music concert venue, but within the world of the Division, the first question we have to ask is, how would it be used? And of course, taking a page from research on different events that have happened worldwide, a sports hall is very naturally used as a distribution center. So that adds another layer of how the transformation happens within a world that's being torn apart by a virus. So, of course, this becomes an aid distribution center. But of course, that's going to change as well, because it becomes a target for factions that want to profit from the fall of society, that need these resources. So when we get to the ice in the middle of the Madison Square Garden, it's being transformed. And you can see the queues of people, the medicine, the water, and that's what the factions want to take, and what you as a division agent have to defend. And every single building within New York City or Washington, D.C. that we're going to use for gameplay reasons, we have to go through this logic. What was it? What was it used for? How would it have been used during the fall? And how is it being used now? And how does that create conflict for the factions and, of course, your division agent?
Recreating these spaces is certainly a massive undertaking, but it's not always just about, where the people are. It's about the people themselves, right? Like, there's so many different character storylines that overlap in the division. So, John, as the lead narrative designer, how do you start to approach telling these stories that we saw not only in the division, but also what we can expect in the sequel?
Yeah, so, fundamentally, we have to consider what the game structure is and the core gameplay that we're trying to sort of strive for. And that really lends itself to focusing on world building and building up this society of characters from many different areas and from many different backgrounds. So, we don't really have a